Are you ready to hear a story that might make you sleepless at night? Today we want to talk about a series of deaths that show no mercy to the young or the old. The Midnight Shadows of Death. In a small town called Konstantin, where cypress trees cast long, airy shadows on the walls of old houses, death prowled mysteriously in the night. The inhabitants, gripped by fear, avoided the darkness, and each night, with the rising moon, a deadly silence enveloped the town. The first victim was an old man living in a wooden house at the end of a dead-end alley. When his lifeless body was found the next morning, there was no sign of a struggle or forced entry. The only noticeable thing was a strange mark on the old man's forehead, a symbol resembling a closed eye drawn in fresh blood. After that, death spread through the town like an invisible plague. Every night, the body of a resident would be found in their home, all bearing the same strange mark on their foreheads. Terrible rumors spread through the town. Some believed there was a serial killer among them. Others spoke of a dark spell and an ancient curse, and still others believed that an evil spirit was haunting the town. The town's police, unable to solve the case, invited a private investigator named Casey. Casey was an intelligent and curious man who was fascinated by mysterious. Upon arriving in Konstantin, he was quickly drawn into the town's heavy, haunting atmosphere. Investigating the file and speaking with the residents, Casey discovered strange details. All the victims had a strange dream before their death, a dream of a large black eye chasing them in the darkness. With the help of an old fortune teller, Casey uncovered a horrifying secret. Beneath the town of Konstantin, there was an ancient tunnel leading to an ancient temple. This temple had been built centuries ago by a dark cult, and they had used it for sacrificial rituals. The fortune teller believed that an evil spirit imprisoned in the temple had now been freed and was searching for new victims. Casey decided to venture into the ancient temple. Lighting their torches, they entered the dark tunnel. The tunnel walls were covered in strange symbols, and the heavy, humid air created a sense of suffocation. After traveling a long distance, they reached a large hall, in the center of which stood a colossal statue of a closed eye. At that moment, the eye of the statue began to glow and a dark, evil force filled the hall. Casey and the fortune teller fought hard to defeat the evil spirit. Finally, by reciting a powerful incantation, they managed to banish the spirit back into the statue, imprisoning it forever. A temporary peace had returned to Konstantin, but the shadows of fear still weighed heavily on the hearts of the inhabitants. Casey, the private investigator, decided to stay in Konstantin to ensure that the danger was completely eliminated. However, he felt that there were other secrets hidden in this small town. Soon after, strange events began to recur. Nightmares, the strange mark on the victims' foreheads, and the deadly silence of the night all indicated the return of an evil force. This time, the victims were not only adults, but also children. Casey, with the help of the old fortune teller, continued his investigation. They went to the town's old library, and, among the dusty and worn books, found an ancient text written in a cryptic language. After months of effort, they managed to decipher the text. In this text, there was a reference to an underground city located deep beneath the earth and under Konstantin. This city was a refuge for dark and powerful creatures who had lived there since ancient times. Casey, accompanied by several brave townspeople, decided to venture into the subterranean city. Using the maps they had found in the ancient texts, they discovered a hidden tunnel that led deep into the earth. After traveling a long distance, they reached a massive iron door adorned with strange symbols. Upon opening the door, they entered a city that never saw the light of day. Tall, dark buildings, winding alleys, and strange creatures lurking in the shadows created an eerie and terrifying atmosphere. Casey and his companions encountered dark creatures in the city who sought to destroy them. After a long and arduous battle, they managed to reach the heart of the underground city. If you've been left breathless with fear so far, like this video and stay with us until the end. In the center of the city, there was a massive temple where a dark and powerful being known as the Shadow sat upon a throne. The Shadow was a creature created by a dark cult thousands of years ago with the goal of dominating the world. Casey and his companions confronted the Shadow and began an epic battle. After a breathtaking fight, Casey managed to destroy the Shadow using a magical sword he had found in the temple. With the Shadow destroyed, the subterranean city crumbled and the dark creatures retreated back into the depth of the earth. Casey and his companions, having survived the ordeal, returned to the surface. However, they knew that the danger was not entirely over. The Shadow might one day return and plunge the world into darkness once more. Casey and his companions returned to Konstantin after defeating the Shadow. The city seemed peaceful, but Casey knew that the tranquility was temporary. An ancient, dark force had taken root in the heart of this town, and the destruction of one Shadow did not necessarily mean the end of the threat. A year passed, and the town changed once more. The ancient cypress trees shed their leaves, their bare branches reaching towards the sky. Wild animals emerged from the forests and attacked the town. Most disturbingly, the townspeople began having terrifying nightmares haunted by long, dark shadows. Casey realized that the Shadow hadn't been completely destroyed. A part of it still lingered in the heart of Konstantin, growing stronger. With the help of the old fortune teller, he embarked on a quest to destroy the Shadow once and for all. They returned to the old library and, among the dusty books, found a piece of a map. This map pointed to a secret location where the heart of darkness was said to be hidden. Using the map, they journeyed to a remote place deep in the forest surrounding Konstantin. There, they found a deep, dark well that seemed to have no bottom. The fortune teller believed that the heart of darkness resided in the depth of this well. Casey and his bravest companions descended into the well. As they delved deeper, the darkness grew thicker, and the wailing of lost souls filled their ears. At last, they reached an underground chamber, in the center of which lay a pulsating black heart. This heart was the source of all the evil that had plagued Konstantin. Casey attacked the dark heart with his magical sword, but with its strike, the heart grew stronger. Just then, one of Casey's companions, overcome by fear, betrayed him and snatched the sword from his hand. With immense power, the dark heart pulled the traitor into itself. Shocked by his friend's betrayal, Casey continued to fight. He knew that if the dark heart was not destroyed, all of Konstantin, and perhaps even the world, would be consumed by darkness. With his last ounce of strength, he plunged the sword into the heart. With a loud shriek, the heart burst, and the blinding light filled the underground chamber. They emerged from the ordeal alive, but their victory was bittersweet. They had lost a friend and knew that the battle against darkness was far from over. Konstantin seemed calmer after the destruction of the Dark Heart. The cypress trees grew green again, animals returned to the forests, and the townspeople's nightmares diminished. But Casey knew this peace was deceptive. An ancient, dark force had taken root in the hearts of this town, and the destruction of one heart did not necessarily mean the end of the threat. People began to disappear without a trace. On moonlit nights, long, dark shadows were seen in the town's shadowy streets. And most importantly, a deep sense of dread had settled over the entire town. Casey, who had become the town's hero, began investigating the disappearances. They discovered that all the missing people had, before vanishing, dreamed of an underground city filled with gold and jewels. These dreams led people to an old castle outside the town. At the end of this terrifying castle, the Shadow King resided. He was the most evil being on earth and commanded all demons and wicked spirits. Casey and his companions confronted the Shadow King and began an epic battle. The Shadow King challenged them with his magical powers. But with courage and intelligence, Casey and his companions managed to defeat the Shadow King. With the Shadow King defeated, the castle began to crumble. Casey and his companions hurriedly escaped. But at the last moment, one of Casey's companions was crushed by a falling piece of the ceiling and lost their life. As we move forward, Casey finds new signs that the terrifying creatures are still around. What will happen to this town? Stay with us. After a while, Casey realized that darkness had seeped into the souls of the people. They had begun to distrust each other, and their trust had eroded. With the help of the old fortune teller, Casey sought a way to save the people from this situation. They returned to the old library and, among the dusty books, found an ancient book written in a cryptic language. After months of effort, they managed to decipher the text. In this text, there was a reference to an ancient temple located deep in the forest surrounding Konstantin. This temple had once been a sacred place for the worship of light, but over time, darkness had prevailed over it. Casey and the fortune teller, accompanied by several brave townspeople, journeyed toward the temple. Upon entering, they found themselves in a dark and eerie realm. Broken statues, blood-stained walls, and a heavy, humid air created a suffocating atmosphere. In the center of the temple, a large altar held a gleaming black stone. Casey realized that this black stone was the heart of the darkness that had spread throughout the town. If this stone were destroyed, the darkness would vanish as well, but destroying it was extremely dangerous and could potentially annihilate the entire town. Casey attacked the black stone with his magical sword, yet its strike only seemed to empower the stone. He knew that if the black stone remained undestroyed, all of Konstantin, and perhaps the world, would be consumed by darkness. With his final ounce of strength, he plunged the sword into the stone. The stone shattered with a loud cry, and a blinding light filled the entire temple. With the black stone destroyed, darkness was banished from the town. The sun rose fully once more, and plants revived. However, Casey knew this was not the end. Darkness always lurked, and it might return one day. Before long, strange occurrences began to happen. People started having nightmares filled with ghostly, glowing-eyed creatures that seemed to stare into their souls. These creatures turned their nightmares into reality, instilling terror in their hearts. Casey discovered that a new generation of shadows had emerged. These shadows were more powerful and intelligent than their predecessors, capable of infiltrating people's minds and controlling them. With the help of the old fortune teller, Casey sought a way to combat this new threat. They returned to the old library and among the dusty books, found an ancient book written in a cryptic language. After months of effort, they managed to decipher the text. In this text, there was a reference to an ancient weapon capable of destroying in darkness. This weapon was hidden in the depths of an underground lake. United, the people journeyed towards the underground lake. Descending a deep well, they entered a dark and winding tunnel. The tunnel walls were covered in strange symbols, and the heavy, humid air created a suffocating atmosphere. After traveling a long distance, they reached a large, dark lake. Deep within the lake, a shimmering sword was embedded. With great effort, Casey managed to pull the sword from the water. In that instant, the lake began to churn, and dark creatures emerged, attacking them. With courage and cunning, Casey and his companions managed to escape. Emerging from the underground lake, Casey and his companions returned to Konstantin. They knew the final battle with the shadows was at hand. Wielding the magical sword, Casey confronted the shadows. One by one, he destroyed them until he reached their leader. The Shadow Leader was a powerful and terrifying creature who ruled over all the other shadows. Casey and the Shadow Leader engaged in an epic battle, one that would determine the fate of Konstantin and perhaps even the world. After a long and arduous struggle, Casey managed to defeat the Shadow Leader. With the leader destroyed, all the other shadows vanished, and darkness was banished from Konstantin forever. If you still dare to hear more stories like Konstantin, tell us your opinion in the comments. We'll be back soon with the scariest stories. Casey and his companions emerged victorious from the battle. However, they knew this was not the end. Darkness always lurks, and it may return one day.